Welcome to this overview of EmpowerID's multi-factor authentication capabilities. EmpowerID is a full-featured multi-factor and adaptive authentication solution. These authentication policies control access to users when they're accessing EmpowerID itself for self-service or delegated administration capabilities or privileged access management. They also control access to any application that is federated to use EmpowerID as its authentication source or identity provider. All of these are controlled by policies, so you can have stronger policies for your admins or high-risk accounts and less stringent policies for your low-risk or less dangerous user accounts. The policies control what a user has to do to verify their identity, and it's based on who they are, their risk level, which application they're trying to access, and the risk associated with that, and also whether they're on the network or they're off the network coming from an untrusted source. Those policies can be configured by administrators to ensure that just the right level of security is applied while providing convenience for the end users. So at this point, I am logging into EmpowerID. I'm presented with a login screen. I could choose a different identity provider, such as Azure, and log into EmpowerID using that credential. EmpowerID could still add on additional multi-factor on top of that if I were accessing an application or performing something risky to where it was required by my policy. I could also log in using my EmpowerID identity. Now in this case, we're going to log in as Patrick's account using a very traditional username and password. Now Patrick has multi-personas. We're going to pick our standard Patrick user here. And now it's saying that Patrick, since Patrick is accessing as a privileged admin, accessing from an unknown PC or device, and coming across the internet from a remote subnet, it's requiring me to do a multi-factor authentication. Now, it also detects other things via the adaptive authentication policies. Risky behavior, such as Patrick's attempting to log in from Florida, and 20 minutes ago he had logged in from Ohio. That would be what would be called an impossible journey. Those policies can detect these risky behaviors and trigger either blocking the user, sending email alerts, or forcing them to go through additional levels of identity verification. So in this case, I can choose from any of the options that Patrick has enrolled in order to validate my identity. I could choose the EmpowerID mobile application to receive a push where I could click to approve my login on my mobile phone, or I could use another form. In this case, I'm going to use my FIDO2 biometric key. So I have a biometric key plugged into my laptop, which is nice and convenient. I can simply click and touch my thumb to the biometric, and therefore it validates my identity and gets me into the system because I have possession of that device. Now I'm in the system and I access the EmpowerID. Now, if I access another application, like let's say I'm single sign-oning into the HR, that might have a different policy and require me to do a higher level of multi-factor or identity verification. Or if I'm accessing a privileged credential or server that requires an additional multi-factor. EmpowerID has a workflow-based multi-factor, so in any workflow process or in any part of the application or its microservices, you can always force another form of identity verification just because that is a workflow. Now, we're going to log out real quick and show you it related to multi-factor and related to my FIDO key. EmpowerID supports WebAuthn to where you can even eliminate usernames and passwords entirely. So it's detecting I have a FIDO key, and it's prompting me to touch with my biometric fingerprint identification. And you'll notice it instantly validated my identity, and I'm logging into the system using this trusted device. So in this case, we used a hardware token with biometrics to get me all the way into the system, and I didn't have to know or remember my username or password. So EmpowerID supports this capability on top of the standard multi-factor after you enter a username or password. Eliminating the password and even eliminating remembering a username is a great convenience feature for users to cut down the support calls and to give them a better overall user experience. So that's a quick overview of an end user experience of multi-factor authentication. Adaptive authentication rules were validated on the back end, and of course, all of this is controlled via flexible policies that your admins can configure that use factors like risk and location and roles and other features about the user to determine when we can trust this user. So again, thank you for watching.